All right, guys, bang, bang. I'm here with Will. We're going to break down this week's on-chain metrics. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Pomp. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right. Let's just jump right into it. It seems like after 2 weeks ago when price was going absolute crazy, felt like it was just dropping and there was no floor. Now all of a sudden we get in a situation where there's a little bit of relief and Bitcoin has come back. So maybe just give us a quick overview. Like, what did you see in those on-chain metrics this week?
Yeah, sure. So I guess we can just kind of roll through, give kind of a high level overview of the newsletter we put out this morning. So, I think it's some key takeaways from what we put out this morning and just kind of the general trends through the week are, first of all, there's a clear rotation from short-term holders to long-term holders, which is interesting, especially in comparison to trends in previous cycles, which we'll get into. Exchange flows have kind of reversed. Last week we were talking about how we had seen a lot of coins moving onto exchanges before Wednesday's dump, but I think now we're starting to see nothing crazy, but those coins we're now seeing net outflows from exchanges, which is showing we're in somewhat of accumulation. And then also we're seeing new entities coming onto the network, which we had been trending down in new entities coming onto the network for perhaps the last month or so. So seeing that in the last week, last 2 weeks is really showing that new entities are probably getting attracted by lower prices. And then the last thing, miners are not accumulating as heavy as they had been. I think for the entire time that we've been doing this, we've consistently been talking about how miners are accumulating more and more, but we've actually kind of seen a plateau in that behavior. So for some like kind of short term, support resistance zones, I think one big one above us is the 200-day moving average, which is around like 40,000, 750, 41,000, and then also 50,000, obviously. And then 53K, and then obviously 59 to 60K. And those are, I think, kind of confluence between technical supports and on-chain supports based off of volume. And then to the downside, I think, 30K obviously, but then if we lost 30K, I don't see a lot of support between 30K and 20K. And so those are the two main zones that I'm looking to the downside, but we're really just kind of chopping in this range.
Got it. Let's talk a little bit about these accumulation addresses. I think a lot of people don't actually know what those are and then what they've been doing over the last week or so. So maybe just start with what is an accumulation address?
Yeah, so accumulation addresses are addresses that have received at least two funds. At least two transactions inbound. So I think Glassnode does that because by using two instead of one inbound transactions, it kind of eliminates like one-time use addresses, right? So it's people basically that are buying Bitcoin, moving more BTC into the address, but aren't moving any out. And so there's that, but then there's also the balance of those addresses. So I think you need to look at both of those things because those accumulation addresses might be going up, but the balance in the accumulation addresses might be sideways or it might be down, which is showing it's more retail coming on, versus if you see the balance in the addresses really having a strong leg up in confluence with the accumulation addresses going up, then I think that shows that there's some larger entities. But in the last 7 days, we've seen about I have down 7,430 new addresses in the last 7 days. So it's looking like there's some new, at least in the short to midterm, kind of people that are, scooping up these coins at these levels. They aren't necessarily swing trading, but, they're just kind of accumulating. Perhaps maybe they're just looking to, capture a bounce up into 50Ks, but they're not selling very short term. And then, over time, we'll see if some of these accumulation addresses become long-term holders. But for now, yeah, they're not selling. The accumulation and the addresses all together, they've added 47,270 new coins to their holdings. So I think that's healthy to see, like we were just saying, the balance go up in confluence with the addresses.
Got it. And so it feels like in some way you've got one, these accumulation addresses, lots of those now being able to be identified on chain. And then most of the coins that are being sold are between like 1 day old and 1 month old or 1 week old. And so this seems to be more traders that are actually, anyone who is selling is more of a trader.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of selling from, more than usual from coins under 24 hours. These are coins that are being moved in and out, and it's, really just traders moving in and out of the market. So I think seeing this spike in the younger cohort selling, I think this is kind of showing that traders aren't really confident at these price levels in either direction, because we've really just been trading in this, call it, 32, 33K, and, 40K at the top of the range. We've just been trading in that little channel since the crash. So I think it's just showing that a lot of these guys are just kind of swing trading, buying it, at the support at the bottom, and then trimming at resistance. And I think, I've talked to a couple traders over the last few days. I had this guy on I do the Twitter spaces, and his name's CryptoCred. But he's really good with the TA, and he was saying, yeah, I'm myself and other people that I know that are technical traders, we're just waiting for confirmation to the upside. We're not gonna, try to. They're okay with giving up some of the upside in return for being confident in their entry. So I think right now people are kind of hesitant to go long, or short for that matter. I think people are just waiting for the market to kind of make a decision. And then like the futures open interest is pretty flat too. So I think that's showing people are kind of hesitant to jump back into the market after, last week.
Got it. And so it does seem like while the traders don't really know should they be long or short, and they're kind of doing more of the short-term optimization, long-term holders seem to be drastically still accumulating, right? People who don't care about short-term price movement seem to be unmoved by any of this price volatility, and they're actually taking the opportunity to buy more.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because at the same time we have the long-term holders that have been adding to their holdings over the last 7 days. And then when you look, it's almost like inversely correlated. The short-term holders have been trending down. So you get this, and I don't know if this is a really good thing, because obviously you want to continually have coins move to people who aren't going to sell. But I think it would be nice to see some new market participants come in and stay. I don't think that's a great thing. Obviously in terms of, building up that base of coins, in terms of price, but just in terms of adoption, I think it would be better to see new entities come on. But I mean, that's not the end of the world. But I think what's interesting is, when we get to the previous, like at the top of cycles, you start to see, retail really overtake a lot of the movement in and out of exchanges and volume and things like that. And they start to take up a larger portion of supply. And at the same time, you see the longer term holders sell off. And then in the bear market, you see the opposite. All the short term speculators move out because Bitcoin went down 80%. And, when we get to the bottom of the bear, that's peak when long term holders are accumulating, because they've been through multiple cycles. So I think it's interesting right now that you're seeing, and this is one thing that if I had to look at something that looked like a top, it would be this, because you're starting to see the long-term holders take up a larger portion of supply again, while short-term holders are trending down, meaning they're selling. Where in previous cycles, it's almost like these lines had crossed where short-term holders really ramp up their holdings and long-term holders begin to kind of sell into the strength, mid to into the later phases of the bull market. So that's something I'm keeping my eye on, because that's not something that's happened in previous cycles, where midway through the cycle, you've seen the short-term speculators step out while the long-term holders are, coming in and scooping up those coins, but for, this prolonged of a period of time. I just think that's interesting.
What do you think the ramifications of that would be? Does that signal maybe potentially a bigger bull market, a longer bull market, maybe not a crash, at some point in the future, or we don't know yet?
Yeah, I think it's showing that we're building this stronger base up. Obviously, it's not great for the adoption, like I said, but in terms of the coins, being locked up and building up this floor, I think that this is good in that sense. So yeah, I think if if this continues and coins continually are moving to these long-term holders, perhaps we're in this strong accumulation zone. But it's just a question of if that were the case, how long are they able to kind of hold the floor while new sellers are moving out, and what's the offset between those two forces. But I think it's kind of neutral. I think if you see continued accumulation by long-term holders, and this trend continues now, where I'm seeing this reversal where the short-term holders are selling off and long-term holders are continuing to add. I think perhaps the structure of the underlying forces behind the cycle are perhaps different than previous ones.
What's up, guys? Before we continue with this interview, I want to quickly talk about our sponsor, Kraken. Kraken's one of the most established and secure places to buy cryptocurrencies on the internet. They've been at the forefront of the Bitcoin and blockchain revolution for over 10 years. Their mission is to bring crypto to the masses. So whether you're an OG or this is your first trade, Kraken has all of the tools that you need to achieve financial freedom. With more than 60 cryptocurrencies available, you can invest in all of the most popular projects in the industry, including Bitcoin, Ethereum, and many, many more. Kraken also provides in-depth articles and guides on every single asset that they list, so you can get up to speed quickly and make smarter investment decisions. Visit kraken.com/bangbang to get started today. Again, that's kraken.com/bangbang. All right, let's get back into this interview. I hope you're enjoying it.
And so what else are you seeing on the on-chain metrics? There's some stuff around like entity growth that you wrote about?
Yeah, so Glassnode has this metric called net entities growth, and you can basically just think of it as like net user growth on the network. So Glassnode kind of forensically clusters different addresses into what they believe looks like a certain entity. So an entity can be a person, a corporate treasury, an investment fund. Well, it just looks like one group or one, and I don't know another synonym for entity, but I think that's pretty straightforward, honestly. But they subtract the new entities coming on the network from entities that have no balance and they look dormant. So there's no action coming from them for a prolonged period of time. And then also they have no BTC. So they subtract that difference and then you get net entities growth. That had actually been trending down over the past, call it, month or so. But now over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, you've seen a new leg up in that. So it's overall, it still looks like it's in a downtrend, but we have seen like this really sharp, almost V-shaped recovery in the new entities coming on the network. So perhaps this is retail, because retail, the smaller entities, call it like 0.001 to 1 BTC. Those are trending up in terms of how much supply they're holding. And then also the number of whales is trending down. So to say that the new entities are, you're seeing this leg up in new entities while there's a move down in the number of new whales coming onto the network, to me, that shows that it's retail or holders with smaller amounts.
Got it. And then talk a little bit in terms of the idea of selling at a loss on aggregate versus actually coming back to break even as people offload some of these Bitcoin.
Yeah, so this is a metric called SOPR. It's something that we've touched on in previous pods. It's basically the aggregate profit loss of the market on any given day. When you see the market at a loss on aggregate, it's something that's not so common in a bull market, because people aren't going to be willing to sell at a loss when Bitcoin is going parabolic. But whenever we do see these dips into where the market's selling at a loss, it usually doesn't stay down there for a long period of time. And we're actually seeing a pretty sharp recovery in that, where the market's now back in net profit, no longer in net loss. So I think that that's kind of showing this rebound in whoever was going to kind of capitulate, because what we had last Wednesday was really a capitulation and then a liquidation. So I think whoever was going to capitulate, it appears that they've already done so.
Got it. And then what about kind of miners? What were they doing this week?
Yeah, so for a while we had been talking about how the miners were stacking really hard and they just kept adding to their positions over the last month and a half. But what I've seen on chain in the last call it 10 days or so is this plateau in miners accumulating. So Glassnode looks at all the miner balances. They have a metric called miner unspent supply, and so right around May 10th. It kind of topped out, and since then we've just kind of been going sideways, which is I guess market neutral because they're not accumulating as heavily as they had been, but they're not dumping necessarily either. But I have seen a lot of selling coming from Chinese miners, which is interesting because I heard some talks about China, the CCP cracking down on different mining pools. And then also something about the wet season, and they have to move their their machines to a different location. I might be misquoted on that, but it definitely is showing a lot of selling coming from these Chinese miners. Particularly one is Poolin, which I looked up was the second largest Chinese pool for miners. So. I think that's interesting. I definitely contributed a little bit to some of the selling last Wednesday. There's a big spike in coins moved to exchanges from Poolin. But yeah, I'm seeing this trend in selling from Chinese miners over the last week.
Got it. And then what about the actual Bitcoin on the exchanges? It seems like that was a little bearish last week, but may have flipped this week.
Yeah, I think for the entire cycle, there had been this narrative kind of driving, at least from the data side, that the coins are being moved off the exchanges and then they're moving into deep cold storage, never to resurface again. But over the last month or so, we've really started to see these coins come back on exchanges in a big way, and especially leading up to last Wednesday, we saw a lot of coins moving onto exchanges, which was kind of this early sign that perhaps we were getting ready for this dump, especially in the hours leading up to, call it Tuesday, Wednesday. But after Wednesday, we're starting to see that kind of reverse. So I think we kind of touched this at the beginning, but they're not necessarily super bullish. Like, we're not seeing these massive amounts of coins coming off exchanges, but they're no longer net inflows to exchanges. So it is showing that people are taking coins off at a bigger rate than the people are moving coins onto exchanges. So I think that's just showing some accumulation, but it doesn't look like there's any crazy capitulation coming in the short term, just based off of that, because it seems like people are now accumulating again slowly.
Got it. And so would it be fair to say that, kind of in summary, 2 weeks ago, things were a little bit more uncertain than they are now? Definitely there was a lot more selling, some capitulation. This week, it seems like, while we're not completely out of the woods, things are more positive, looking like there's been some relief or recovery. And ultimately, the bull market is still intact and it's got a lot more room to run.
Yeah, I think we're in this interesting zone here where the short-term price action is definitely could go either way, but I think it's starting to show some promising signs, especially after Wednesday. We're definitely seeing at least this kind of relief bounce here, but I still remain bullish for the longer-term cycle. I think this is just kind of this big consolidation and this big shakeout that I still see us going higher based off of kind of the broader metrics. But I think in the short term I remain kind of optimistic but skeptical, I guess you could say, where it's starting to look like things are turning around, but it's not screaming like this thing is about to explode. So I think in the short term, it's just kind of a market where you just kind of sit back and watch and let the market tell you more.
Absolutely. And then before I let you go, tell us a little bit about how the email is going. You recently launched it. And it seems like it's growing pretty quickly. But just remind everyone about that email that you send out a couple times a week.
Yeah, man. So, every Friday I send out the newsletter on Pomp Substack, but then on Monday and then sometimes on Wednesdays, if needed, I send out a newsletter on my Substack, which is BTC by WC3.substack.com. I think we're now up to almost 16,000 subscribers, which has been super awesome. You guys have been, super supportive. I appreciate it. But if anybody's not subbed to the newsletter, go ahead and do that. I would really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, listen, I'm enjoying this. I'm learning a ton. I think a lot of people are really enjoying these videos. So thank you so much for doing this, and just keep us updated on what's going on chain. And we'll do it again next Saturday.
Thanks a lot, Pomp. Take it easy, man.